All right. So you landed the convo with a major retailer. First off, it's a big hell yes. Congratulations. But now what? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode today. This is going to be a conversation that I have not really had on here, but something I talk to my one-on-one clients about a lot. And it's really once you get your foot in the door to just start talking to a major retailer, what do you do next? You could have found them through pitching, through a trade show. Maybe they found you. Whatever way you got that foot in the door, it's awesome. So excited for you. But then the real work kind of starts and you really need to level up. And there is that shift from I have been pitching and speaking to small independent retailers to now it's the big leagues, and the buyers expect a different type of conversation and they expect you to know different things or speak in a little bit of a different way than when you're just talking to another small business owner, because 99.9% of the buyers you're talking to don't know anything about small business. They just know that they love your brand and they want to hear more about your product and how it's a good fit and how it's going to make them money. So let's get into it. Real quick, I need to tell you about something that's been a total game changer for so many of my clients and students. If you've been trying to grow on Faire, but your orders have been slow, your market results have been less than desirable, or you're just not getting discovered the way that you know you should, this is for you. So I created a free workshop called the Faire Success Blueprint Workshop, and I teach you the exact framework that my students have used to land brand new retailers, have their best Faire markets ever, and even grow their wholesale revenue by over 50% or more compared to last year. We've had some that have grown upwards of up 500% to last year. Seriously, this is the strategy that is working right now on the Faire platform. In under 45 minutes, I walk you through what buyers are actually looking for on Faire right now, why most brands stay invisible and how to fix it, and a proven 3-step strategy to stand out to sell more on Faire without adding 100 new SKUs or even rewriting your entire page. So if you're ready to finally turn Faire into a consistent, high-performing sales channel, head to kristenfishercoaching.com/Faire Blueprint or click the link in the show notes. You can watch it right away. You can take notes and get your exact strategy to start showing up like the brand that your dream retailers are already looking for. All right. So before we talk about what you're going to talk about, we have to talk about your mindset and what you are really adopting going into the conversation, because this is a different conversation than the ones that you've been having. If you've not made it into corporate retail, or I should say big box retail yet, you've been mostly in small to mid-sized retailers. This is different. They don't know anything about small business. They're not your peers, meaning it's not small business to small business conversation. They know nothing about it. They know they like your product. They know they like supporting small businesses, but they want to know how you're going to make them money. So there's 2 mindsets that I want you to adopt whenever you're going into this conversation with any type of major retailer. The first thing is I want you to think about the fact that you're not asking for a favor. You're not here to beg. You're not here to get on your hands and knees and say, please put my product in your store. I'm obsessed with this store and da-da-da. There is a form of flattery. Of course, it always goes into any type of sales. That's just the name of the game. But it's not their personal business. They don't have that attachment to it. So the flattery that they're going to get is not going to be the same as maybe what you'd experience when you're speaking to a brick and mortar store owner that put their blood, sweat, and tears and their life is on the line with this store. Okay. A major retailer buyer they're collecting their paycheck and they care about their business and their product categories, but they didn't create that brand. So the flattery needs to come down to a minimum, and you can be excited behind closed doors, jumping up and down, so pumped. But when it comes to the conversation, keep it to a minimum and play it cool, right? Play it a little bit cool. And remember, like I said, you're not asking them for a favor. You are offering them the opportunity to make profit. You're offering them a product that helps them make money. So you need to come in with that CEO mindset. I don't love saying the word CEO mindset, but I can't think of another replacement phrase right now. But that's the mindset I want you to adopt. It's like, I'm a businesswoman. I'm here to do business. Let's talk about it. So that's the first thing, is you adopting that mindset for yourself of playing it cool and knowing your shit. Okay. The second mindset is adopting that buyer psychology, that buyer mindset. Think like a buyer. I love saying that, right? Know what major retailers care about and have that educational, that foundational understanding of what they care about and what's important to them. So you can go in with that mindset so that you're playing it cool and you're speaking their language. Okay. So things like the turnover rate, margins, product lifespan, consumer demand, data is always better than feelings. Now, granted, you're talking to buyers who are product lovers. They're obsessed with product. It's why they do what they do. And so they're going to buy with their eyes first. They're going to really go into it with that emotional connection to it, but they're not going to place an order on something they love if it's not going to make money for them. That's just how it goes. So that's kind of the lay of the land from a mindset perspective. The other thing I really want to stress is that first conversation is one of many, many, many conversations that happen behind closed doors that you will not be a part of. So you might have an in-person conversation. Maybe it's through email. Maybe you meet them at a trade show and then follow up in email. However it's happening for you, maybe it's a phone call, usually not, but however it's happening for you, I want you to understand what happens after that pitch conversation. So you might be speaking to an assistant buyer. More likely, it's probably an associate buyer, a buyer, maybe a senior buyer. If you're in person, perhaps the senior buyer and the DMM would come, but you're oftentimes just speaking to associate buyer because oftentimes, particularly, I know a lot of the listeners here have accessories or like home goods categories. So you usually will speak to an associate buyer. Like I said, maybe it's a buyer. They're not the final decision makers. Buyers have more control, but associate buyers report up into buyers who report to senior buyers, who report to DMMs, who report to GMMs, who report to the VPs, who report to usually the CEO, but that it can vary, right? There's different levels and all the things. So there's other there's some other companies have different levels, but that's kind of generally the way it goes. So that first conversation that happens, they say they like the product. That's them kind of assorting and kind of feeling things out and putting their collection, their assortment together. So having that conversation with you, yes, I love this SKU, this SKU, this SKU. They're probably going to pull more from your line than they actually intend to buy because you always like to have options. So there's always a lot of 2 to get to 1s, 3 to get to 1s kind of thing. And it might be they have 2 to get to 1 with you and another product, another brand. Might not just be your products, but know that what they choose is not necessarily what they're going to buy. It's probably going to be at least half of that. Okay. And what will happen is they're going to take any product they pull from you and it's going to go through a series of assortment editing meetings that they do on their own. Then they're going to write their buys up and work with their teams. Then they're going to pitch their collection and their buys to the different levels. Usually it goes through 2 rounds or at least 1 round, if not 2 rounds before it gets to the CFO and the CEO in the major kind of buy meetings. It's a lot of people to get through, a lot of point of views, a lot of budget changes. The open to buy is constantly changing. So they might have all intentions of buying your product in your meeting. You might walk away feeling really good and then it gets cut and it's not because they don't want to buy it. So I want to say that. I know I kind of just went on this tangent, like a 5-minute tangent or something about this, but I feel like it's really important for you to just understand what goes on behind the scenes because I know what happens when you start to take it to heart and you feel like you take it personally. And I don't want you to take it personally because this is like really truly business-driven conversations that go through so many different iterations. And a lot of times if something gets cut, it is nothing to do with your product and everything to do with, quite frankly, the financial side of things. Or it just doesn't fit in. But usually it's the financial side. So I wanted you to understand that. So you're adopting the mindset going into the conversation of, I'm coming in like guns blazing with all my ducks in a row and I know how to speak to these buyers and I know how to speak their lingo. And also understanding that it might not go through to a buy right now, but you got that conversation and it might go through to a buy later. So it's still going to be a win-win and it's a great experience. So I wanted to start with that. So as you're preparing for this call, what do these buyers like? What do they want to hear? So like I said, you're not talking about flattery to them. You're not trying to woo them with your love of their store. You're wooing them with your knowledge of their customer base. So I want you to be prepping yourself on their assortment that they have currently, understand just generally who their target customer is, what categories and brands they currently are carrying. So if you have competition in their stores, what else are they carrying and how do you fit into that landscape? Any recent launches or initiatives that they've had, kind of just understanding what's going on from a marketing perspective in their business, and their price architecture and aesthetic. Architecture meaning what's their general price points for the product category that you are in. You don't need to know their whole business. And why I think it's important to understand these is because you can then guide your conversation when you're pitching your products to them around what makes the most sense based on what you're seeing in their stores already. Either your white space opportunity, they don't have anything like you, or they have a lot of product like you. How do you fit in? How can you pitch them something that's different? So something like stationery, there's going to be so much competition in the stores, right? Because they want to bring in a breadth of brands. That just typically is what works really well. But if they have a ton of, I don't know, birthday cards, maybe you want to pitch something different, right? Or maybe they're trying to update the line, just coming prepared with what you're seeing them already doing. So you can either pitch a fresh take on something or give them updates to product that maybe they've had for a while. What they want to know about yourself, they want to know those best sellers and the performance metrics. They want to know what you're seeing trending out there. I always loved asking the brands, like, what do you see coming? And like, how are you staying on top of that? They want to know, obviously, the things that every retailer wants to know, which is your margins, your lead times, all of that. But the caveat here is they're going to want a different margin than what's on that line sheet or that catalog, right? They're not going to want 50% margin. So you need to be prepared with your pricing structure on the back end. You don't have to negotiate in this first conversation, but they might come to you and say, we need an 80% margin, or we need a 75% margin, or whatever it might be. And that might be shocking to hear, but that's likely what's going to happen depending on the category. If you're in food or like consumables, that won't be the case. You'd be more like 60% probably. But for accessories, definitely above 70%, if not 80, is what they're going to push you for. So you have to be prepared on how could you make that work before even going into the conversation, because you just know that they're going to be placing higher units. So have conversations with your manufacturers, your suppliers, to see what unit thresholds you have to hit in order to get cost savings for you, so that you can go into the conversation and say, we can give you that discount, but knowing in your mind, these are the units that they'd have to hit in order to make that happen. Okay. So I wanted to put that caveat in there. They also are going to want to know about your brand story. A lot of times, if I was buying at Urban, I'd want to know background about the buyer, about the brand, their why, anything interesting about the brand that we could sink our teeth into from a marketing perspective always helped. And those are always the brands that got bigger buys from us, because if we could do a cool marketing story or take on a brand that we were bringing in, we'd have to have a bigger collection in order to warrant that marketing space on the calendar. Okay. So if you have a great story, really pushing that and making sure that they're really aware of it. If your story you don't feel is interesting, it might still be interesting. Maybe it's like your process or how you bring your art to life or what you're inspired by, your background, right? A lot of us don't think we have interesting stories, and we actually do. So still tell your story, and that'll help them just be really engaged with you. So I alluded to speaking their lingo, right? So that's kind of the research. We just talked about the research that you need to have prepared for your little elevator pitches and being really familiarized with the retailer. But you need to be able to speak their lingo, right? You need to know those corporate retail terms. And mid-size, larger size independent retailers are probably speaking to you in that way. You probably know a lot of them already. I know you know the basics. Okay. Sell through and MOQ and payment terms, those things. But there are some other things that you might not know that are more their lingo. And so instead of going through on this podcast episode like a whole slew, is that the word? A whole list. Maybe that's a better way to say it. A whole list of terms and formulas and all the things. I put together a cheat sheet for you guys. It's a retail industry terms and formulas cheat sheet that you can just have access to so you understand what the kind of the lingo is and the acronyms, keeping in mind that most corporate companies have their own random acronyms that they make up. So there might be some things that you can say, I don't actually know what that is. That's totally fine. But there are common ones that every single retailer uses, and I want to make sure you know them. And you also know some of the formulas so you can do some quick calculations if you need to. So you can grab that. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's kristenfishercoaching.com/retail cheat sheet. And you can get access to that. It's free, just a cheat sheet that I wanted you to have. Okay. So I want to make sure you know all these terms. Some of the things that you need to be prepared for that are going to be very different from operating on Faire, for example, or even a retailer coming to buy from you directly that's an independent retailer. These corporate retailers, you're doing business on their terms, right? That's just, it's fact. You're going to be going into their system. You're going to have probably some headache trying to understand their unique PO system that you have to abide by all their rules. Each retailer, for the most part, has a different one, and they have their own things baked into it that you're going to have to figure out. So there's a couple things. There's the contract component. There are net terms, that payment terms. There are rules around carton sizes, how you're shipping, who you're shipping with, pallets, how you pack the pallets, how you label your boxes, the UPC codes, the packaging, all of that has to be perfectly following their rules or you will get chargebacks. Okay. I would always, the Urban Inc. system, so Urban, Anthro, Free People, Terrain, Beholden, all the brands underneath Urban use one system. And it was confusing. And I always felt so bad for the brands that I was buying from because it was confusing even for me because the buyer doesn't even know that system. And so they could help you as much as possible. And sometimes they're not helpful buyers, right? So you just have to be prepared that it is a lot. It's a lot. And you really want to take it. It's okay if you get a smaller order from them so that you can baby step your way into it. So I just want to kind of say that just so you have that kind of thing in the back of your mind of what would come from this. It's important to make sure you are legally protected. So you'll be signing their contract. You're not giving the retailer a contract for them to sign on from you. You're signing theirs. I think it's really important to make sure you have a lawyer look over so that you understand what you're getting yourself into and they can help guide you through to make sure that it's right. Oftentimes it's pretty standard or straightforward, but you want to make sure you're protected in terms of things like returns. If they might have clauses in there that if they don't sell at a certain sell-through percent, that they have the right to return the unused inventory to you. And guess what? That inventory will be damaged because especially if it's in a store setting, if it's just e-commerce, probably would be okay, but it's going to be dusty. You see what those sale bins look like at Anthro, right? They're always like dusty and gross. So just thinking about, or just making sure rather that you are protected and you have someone looking over it for you. You'll probably get more comfortable as you grow with looking at it and knowing what to spot, but especially for your first one, make sure you have someone looking at that for you. And know that the payment terms are set by them. You can negotiate. You can negotiate the pricing. You can negotiate the lead time, the turnaround time. You can ask to negotiate the payment terms, but you might not have a lot of leverage, especially if you're a new, smaller brand for them. Smaller meaning they're not buying a lot of units from you quite yet. And a lot of units is like 10,000 or more, depending on the retailer. But if they're just placing a couple thousand units, you're not going to have much leverage, but you can ask. So know that it's going to be probably net 30 would be like a very lucky number, but it's probably going to be more like net 60. So just go into it, making sure you're in a financial place where that makes sense before you're pitching these larger retailers, okay? So I wanted to make sure we talked through some of those terms and just how to be prepared before you even have the conversation so that you can just make sure it's the right fit for you and you're pitching major retailers at the right time for you. Because it's not all rainbows and butterflies to be in a corporate retail setting, right? It's not all rainbows and butterflies to get your product in a major retailer. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you're newer as a brand or newer to wholesale, you don't want to go headfirst into corporate retail or big box retail. It can be challenging and frustrating, and it might make you feel like you don't want to do wholesale. And we don't want that for you. You want to do it when it's the right time for your brand as like that next step. Okay, so we've gotten through all the kind of prep work. When you're actually on the call or in the meeting, you don't want to lead with what makes your brand unique, right? You want to lead with what matters to your buyers. Here's how our candles outperform category averages in gift shops nationwide. Like you're pitching it, right? Or we've had consistent X% reorder rates from our retailers for the last year. You're talking about your best sellers and why they perform. You're talking about visual merchandising potential. Is there a unique way that they can show your product or house your product? You want to give them the confidence that the inventory they're bringing in is going to work for them. And that you as a brand are prepared and can handle that level of volume. They want to feel confident that you've already been doing this. So if this is your first major retailer you're in, they don't need to know that. They don't need to know that. Unless they ask you, who else are you in? Be prepared with that. But it doesn't necessarily matter. It actually, in some cases, it's great if you haven't been in another retailer yet. I always loved finding gems at Urban. When I found brands that were newer, smaller, even new to wholesale, I was fine with that. As long as they were prepared to deliver on the requirements that we had in terms of the lead time, the units, they could handle the system, right? That they were all set up and that they weren't like going to crumble and then not get me the PO. Because that's like, at the end of the day, I need to make sure the order could come in, okay? You want to just really instill that confidence that you know your data and you are showing them that your product will convert for them, okay? So being able to really pitch in a way that gives them that confidence, shows them what they need to buy that will be right for their store is a great way to pitch and always made me feel really confident. Like I said, this is different. These conversations are different from smaller retailer conversations because it's often founder to founder. It's more emotional and relationship driven. Corporate big box retailers, it's buyer to business. Okay. It's data, profit focused. But I want to stress that relationship building still does matter. It's just different, right? You're not connecting with them on social media. That's not happening. It's really your personality and making them like fall in love with you as a brand. Like I loved working with small brands and being able to literally change their lives in some instances. Like when we would strike it with a brand that worked really well for us and we could give them these massive POs, it felt so freaking good. And I loved it when I would become friends with these founders. It was awesome. It's what inspired me to do what I'm doing now. I really feel like that came through that experience at Urban. They want to support you. They want to see you succeed. They want to bring your product into their store, but you can't just rely on charm, right? Because it's not all up to them. And at the end of the day, you need to make them money. They don't want to mark down your product. And you don't want your product marked down. It doesn't look good for either of you to have marked down products sitting in their stores, okay? Truly think through what they need to know from you and just come in with that confidence perspective. You really want to avoid over talking and like word vomiting, right? The nerves are going to be there, but talking more slowly, breathing, and really just coming at it from a calm place. Don't try and wing it with no structure. I don't think any single person listening to this, you're not listening to this if you were a wing it person, right? You need to know your numbers. You need to know pricing without even looking at a line sheet. You can just rattle it off like a sales rep, right? You don't want to be like overly what's the word? Overly friendly, like you're trying to be their bestie, right? There's a fine line. And I think that you know what I'm trying to say. It's like you need to come in professional, clear, and confident, but also establish that relationship. Okay. You don't want to be asking them tons of questions on that first call. They want to know that like you're invested in a long-term relationship, not just a single PO. And it's totally fine and fair to say, when do you think you're going to make that decision? Right. And I'm going to get into I think I'll talk next about kind of recap the conversation in person or on that call or in that email, however your conversation's going, right? But you don't want to ask them a ton of questions because you can always figure it out after, right? You don't want to be asking them, what PO system do you use? What's this, that, and the other? What are your terms? Don't ask that until you're getting the PO and then you figure it out, right? You wait, you get the order, you figure it out. Because you want them to think like you're not asking about it because you already know what you're doing. You've already done this a million times, right? That's the confidence level you're bringing to this conversation. So as the conversation is wrapping up with them, you want to make sure that you are getting the next step from them in the conversation. Does not mean they're saying, hey, we're moving forward with this, but you want to make sure that you have an idea of what they're interested in. So you can send them samples if you're not in person. Even if they don't ask for them, send them the samples, okay? So make sure you know what they're interested in. Ideally, they've been editing as you're going and they're pulling things for them to keep. So be prepared if you take samples to the meeting that they can keep them. Or you could say, I need them back by this date, and that's totally fine too. They'll ship them back to you. So make sure you have that clarity on your end. And also, it is totally fair to say, when you think you'll make this decision by, or what floor set are you considering this for? And just asking them some of those like general questions is totally fine to help you have a timeline. So you can say, okay, I'm going to follow up with you around this date just to check in. And you can just preemptively say that. Here is the thing I want to stress. There is so much art to the follow up. And the art is you freaking follow up. You freaking follow up, you follow up, you follow up, you follow up. If you haven't heard from them, it doesn't matter. You keep following up. I promise you, it is not because they're just ghosting you. They might ghost you, but here's the thing. If they're ghosting you, what's likely happening is they're drowning at their desk, crying into their coffee every morning, okay? Or they were moved to a different department, or they quit and there's a new buyer that doesn't even know you exist, and your emails are just going into the abyss. So that could be happening. Okay, that's totally happened. There's a lot of turnover in retail. But more than likely what's happening is they don't have an answer yet and they don't know what to say to you, and their inbox is so full that they're just avoiding the things that they can't answer right away. That is usually what the case is. So a no is not a no until it's a no, and even then it's not necessarily a no. It's a not right now, okay? So keep following up and don't be afraid to do that. Just give it like a week in between. You don't want to follow up like every other day. That's very annoying. But follow up every week, because usually the buying cycle is like a 2-month process. So, time goes by before they can get you an answer. And sometimes you might not be right then, and they come back 6 months later and they're ready to place an order on that thing or something new. So staying in touch. Don't be afraid to follow up. I can't stress that enough. Okay. So I know you don't want to be annoying, and I get that, but part of your job as a business owner that is in the wholesale game is the follow-up. It's not pestering. You're just running a business. So have that mindset of, this is business. I want the sale. Okay. And flip the script in your mind, right? Flip that script of, I'm being annoying, to, I am making their job easier by keeping that conversation going and continuing to present product to them that I know is going to sell. And reminding them, hey, this is still outstanding. That's great. You're helping them to stay on top of things. Okay? They expect you to follow up. They want you to follow up. It keeps you on their radar. It helps cut through the inbox chaos. And a lot of buyers, like I said, just need multiple touch points before they can actually move forward, because of everything going on internally with budgeting and reviews and meetings and things changing constantly, right? So make sure you're following up. Okay. So after that first conversation that you have with them, a follow-up within 3 to 5 days is expected unless they've given you a specific timeline whenever you've discussed. Okay. So follow up with them. If you don't hear from them after that, give it another week and then follow up again, maybe a week and a half later. Stretch it just a little bit so it doesn't feel so close together. But you just expand that timeline for the follow-up as you go. Okay. And if you've honestly followed up 3 times over the course of a month, month and a half, it's okay to pause. You can keep the door open. You can send another follow-up and say, hey, just like want to connect when the timing is right for you. I'll keep you posted on new launches and just leave it at that. Or you can say nothing and then you can follow up with them again in a couple months when you have a new launch. So keep them on your radar. Just because you didn't hear from them does not mean that they're not going to move forward. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to recap this. Recapping, mindset. When you're going into this conversation, you are adopting that true business mindset, and you're going to act like you have been doing this for years and you've been in you're going to be in so many major big box retailers that this is like just another conversation you're having. You're going to keep your stress level at a minimum so you can just speak with confidence. You're going to also adopt that buyer mindset. Okay, so you can go into that conversation knowing what they're looking for. You've done the research on their brand. You know you're the right product fit, the right market fit for them. And you also know potentially what they're looking for. You have an idea of how to speak to them because you've got that retail cheat sheet in the show notes. So you know the lingo. If they say something, you'll understand what they're talking about, right? You are confident with the research you've done going into it. Okay. When you go into that call, you're going to lead with what matters to the buyers. Okay. You're leading with the data. You're telling them what works, what sells well, why it sells well, what would be the right fit for them. You are selling and you are pitching your product because you know that it is the perfect fit for their store. So you're coming in like a QVC, what are they called? Host, I guess, with your product. You are selling your wares. You are telling them why it's amazing. Okay. You're keeping in mind that you are speaking to a different type of buyer than perhaps you've been used to speaking to. So you want to keep it really business focused, data focused, while still building that relationship. And you're going to make sure you follow up at least 3 times after that conversation. And then again, with whenever you have newness, but follow up on that specific conversation at least 3 times over the course of a month so that you are showing that you are interested and you are staying top of mind in their inbox. Even if you don't hear from them, it's okay. So next week, very exciting. If you're listening to this in real time, next week is Cyber Week 2025. Okay. And I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm doing 5 days of deals and I cannot freaking wait for this to come. I have been like chomping at the bit for this. I've been working on some things behind the scenes throughout this whole year. And throughout these 5 days of deals, you're going to get a daily deal, but there are 2 brand new offers that I am very pumped to deliver to you. So you're going to get the best deals you could possibly get on the Fair Bootcamp, on the product description toolkit that you might not even know about, little sneaky offer that exists out there that I don't talk about too much. The goal setting workshop with the option to join the live planning session that's happening on January 9th, 2026. And then there's the 2 new offers. So I have a brand new high-level mastermind that's launching that combines product strategy and mindset. And that's really for brands and retailers that are scaling. So that is really exciting. And the new thing that ties into this episode so perfectly is the Wholesale Pitch Playbook. The Wholesale Pitch Playbook, it's going to take you through everything that you need to know for pitching retailers of all sizes, including what to say, when to say it, how to say it, all the things. So if you just listen to this and you're like, this is great once I get that conversation, but how do I get the conversation? The Wholesale Pitch Playbook is going to tell you about that, right? So it's going to go through small and mid-sized retailers, including pitching on Fair, pitching directly, connecting with them, and also when it comes to pitching major retailers, how to do that because it is a little bit different and what you're pitching and when. The biggest thing is the calendar, when to speak to what based on the types of buyers, it's confusing and it can feel a little bit overwhelming. And so this playbook is going to give you everything you need. And that is launching next week for pre-sale. So mark your calendar. Make sure you're on my email list. If you're not on the email list yet, go ahead and DM me at Kristen Fisher Coaching. I'll make sure you're on it. But this is going to be so much fun. If you're listening to this after Cyber Week is over, I'll be linking the wholesale pitch playbook down below so you can grab that to support you with your wholesale pitching. So if you're listening to this after Cyber Week 2025, so I guess that would be 12/6 or past that, then check out the show notes for that link so you can grab the wholesale pitch playbook. I'm super excited about this. And if this episode was helpful for you, as always, I love to hear your feedback. I love getting your DMs when you share what you enjoyed about an episode, or if there's something you're like, hey, that was awesome, I want to hear more about this. It helps me to bring content to you that is relevant and what you're really looking for. This episode came from a conversation in the DMs from someone that listens to the podcast that was like, hey, I actually just landed this call and I don't really know what to do. And I was like, this is a perfect episode. So I love to hear it. So send me a DM at Kristen Fisher Coaching and let me know what you think of the episode. And I will see you in the next chat. Hey friend, quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck with how to get your brand to stand out on Fair? I'm asking you because as a buyer myself, I can tell you that there are just so many brands out there vying for the attention of these buyers, but I know that your brand has something so special and it needs to be seen. I put together a private podcast for you that goes deeper into what buyers are really looking for on the Fair platform and how you can stand out from the crowd to grow your wholesale business and really land those dream buyers. So if this resonates with you, head to the link in the show notes for instant access. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you are loving the show, I would be so beyond grateful if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with one of your biz besties to help spread the word. I hope that you absolutely crush your sales this week. I'll be back to chat with you next Monday.